TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week I call it the closing bell, where me and Ron Marmolewski are back where we started Friday at 5 o'clock. A little change in plans this week. Most likely, I assume he'll be back Thursday at 5 o'clock, but this is how we always used to end the week. And I'm super stoked to have him here, of course. Shout out to our sponsors and partnerships, of course. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play. Download that app. It's free. I promise you, you will get good use out of it. Viva Tequila Seltzer, CT Bets, team, family, second to none, product second to none. Go where you have some adult beverages. Ask for a Viva Tequila Seltzer. If they don't have it, ask why. Terry Smith, Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Head on over to Facebook. Follow Terry Smith, and then, of course, follow Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Head on over to the website. Start ordering. I had some filet mignon yesterday. 2 days prior, I had some lamb chops. I mean, the product is second to none. The customer service is just as good, if not better. At the checkout register, use the promo code CUSTOMER. Get 15% off any order over $199. And when you talk to Terry, tell him, hey, JD from ECSI sent you. So without further ado, good friend and colleague, Mr. Ron Marmolewski.
Hi, Jeff. Good to be with you on a Friday. Thanks for accommodating me for this Friday. Couldn't get there on Thursday, but full slate of NFL, minus 4 teams with byes. And the calm before the storm in college football. Not a lot of marquee matchups, but nobody wants to lose ground this week before next week.
And speaking of that, we will get to the headliner last week, the tale of two halves. Of course, that's Alabama and Georgia. Alabama looked like the Crimson Tide of old with Bear Bryant, with Nick Saban, now Coach DeBoer. An amazing first half, the perfect storm. Carson Beck, and that team couldn't have played a worse half. I know some people changed the station. I know some people that fell asleep. Well, I was one of them that fell asleep, and I woke up and I had to rub my eyes because I saw Georgia with the lead. But we're going to get to that game. I have to start the show with this question. What was a bigger shocker in your mind? Kentucky going to Ole Miss and winning, or prime time in Colorado going to UCF and winning?
You know, I almost wanted to say Colorado, but since I bet Colorado, it wasn't a real surprise to me that it landed inside the 14 points, but I didn't expect them to win. I mean, when you have 14 points, you're not always going to say, oh, they're going to win straight up. So in the Kentucky-Mississippi game, I was a little worried because Kentucky just has a really good defense. Mississippi had a couple of situations that were going against them. It just seemed like Mississippi's focus wasn't all there. So I'm not sure I was shocked by either, but they still weren't anticipated as far as complete straight up losses or wins, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and both teams high expectations. Both teams probably thought before the season start they would get into potentially the final 12. Obviously, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss was in that top 5, 6, 7, depending upon who you listen to. Kentucky, the real amazing part is go back 3 weeks ago where South Carolina goes into Kentucky and boat races them. Then the next week, Kentucky loses to Georgia 13-12. They kicked 4 field goals. So now this was the perfect spot for Ole Miss. They lay the egg. Obviously, I was real short on Kentucky preseason and pre-flop. But I'll say this. I'll ask you this, Ron. If one of those 4 field goals was a touchdown against Georgia and they would have picked off Georgia and then Ole Miss, I think there'd be some rumbling about this Kentucky Wildcat football team.
Yeah, I think we're taking for granted that that defense has come to play. And welcome to the SEC, welcome to college football, because South Carolina is a very up and down team to begin with. I do think if Kentucky would have upset Georgia, Mississippi's focus would have been a little bit better and Kentucky would have been at this high level, and then there may have been a little decrease. I think Mississippi might have preferred if Georgia did get upset in that particular game. So you may not have had the outcome that we had this past week, but make no mistake, defensively, Kentucky is a bona fide team to be reckoned with.
As you said, the slate's not that great. Of course, it's a good slate, but, the marquee games like next week, Ohio State at Oregon, just to let the cat out of the bag, and there's a few more, of course. Let's go to Tuscaloosa. The perfect storm, 28-0 at one point, Crimson Tide. I haven't seen Carson Beck look that bad in my life. I hadn't seen the defense look that bad in my life. Most teams at halftime would have folded. Not Kirby Smart, not the Georgia Bulldogs. A ferocious third and fourth quarter to take a lead with a couple minutes left. And then Jalen Milroe, who I said on this show, I says, if you like Alabama, please jump on Jalen Milroe at 7-1 on the Heisman. At halftime, he went from 7-1 to plus 250 and the favorite. But the 17-year-old Mr. Williams with a catch in between 2 defenders hits the B button on the control and spins and goes 70-plus yards down for the win. Thoughts on both sides and both teams moving forward?
Yeah, it was very interesting because going into the game, I was a little worried about Georgia's defense versus the run, that had let them down a little bit. And if they couldn't shut down the run to their level of past performance, they were going to be susceptible to a DeBoer offense. And all DeBoer has done in college football, wherever he's been, is win and score points. So it was a wake-up call for Georgia and the rest of the SEC, how dangerous that Alabama team is. But it's still a situation where he's replacing a legend in Nick Saban, and it is the SEC, and Georgia had some pride, and they were able to come back. And it was a good wake-up call in a way for Alabama to be tested and then go right to the well, not get defensive about it. When they're down by 1, they went right to the well and went deep. A very good play call at that point. And then they stiffened. It was a chance that Georgia could come back and retake the lead very late in that game, but it didn't happen. Good game all the way around. By halftime, I'm thinking, wow, I've got to really raise my power rating on Alabama. They're just, at this particular level. And by the end of the game, it's still the same 4 teams, Texas, Ohio State, and these 2, that are just, lump them together. And it's pretty much the same, because I came away with respect for Georgia. Maybe this turns their season around a little bit. And respect for Alabama. They still have some work to do defensively, but at any point in time, they're going to be a nightmare for opposing defenses.
There's a rematch of the national championship game this week. And it's funny. I was doing a show yesterday and the light bulb went on. And Ron, the older we get, we know the short-term memory goes. I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. And I'm going back to the championship game. In my head, I'm like, hold on. Washington lost to Michigan. Penix Jr., Michigan undefeated, J.J. McCarthy. And I'm like, this is the rematch here. Now, both head coaches gone, both teams skeleton of what they were, but no one on social media is even talking about revenge game, revenge rematch of the national title. It's just like it's on the schedule and no one's talking about it.
And kudos to them for not talking about it in that particular vein, because you have basically one Washington starter that's back and a handful of Michigan guys who are back from the team. Some of the coaches, of course, are still there for Michigan, but most of the coaches are gone for Washington. If you really think Washington is that revenging team and what a spot and so on, it's, this is the new era of college football. Most of those kids and coaching staff do not have revenge against the Michigan team. It was a little weird because I came in still thinking, well, I kind of like Washington in this spot for a different reason. I just thought in some respects, Michigan on the road going all the way that way would be a little bit tougher because there is one aspect of revenge that is out there that people aren't talking about. And that's the Washington fans haven't forgotten. The Washington fans, and in that atmosphere where they're going to be the home team, Washington fans care, and I think they're going to juice up that Washington team and say, hey, wait a second, we're behind you. We want revenge. Go out and give your best effort against Michigan. And I give that a little bit of weight. The problem I have is by power ratings, I would have made Michigan a short favorite in terms of the power ratings. So it's kind of against my standard to go against power ratings and say, okay, I want Washington. As a favorite, I really shouldn't be doing that, but I generally do like Washington. I thought they could have won the game against Rutgers. I'm glad they didn't win the game against Rutgers. I thought Rutgers would show up a little bit more, but Washington put up a lot of yards against a generally good Rutgers defense. So maybe I'm a little low on Washington. I don't know, but that's the side I would prefer in this particular game, even though my power ratings do not prefer it.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder because, Ron, we've been doing shows now. I think this is our third year, and I have learned so much. And now I look and process these games even more. We had the Washington team total over against Rutgers. And I'm thinking of you as the field goal kicker, missed not one, not two, but 3 field goals.
Yeah.
And so I thought right away, I'm thinking, is Ron going to talk about special teams here? Or is he going to talk about the fact that Washington technically had an extra day of rest compared to Michigan and the cross country there, and the yardage difference was apples and oranges? I went away thinking Washington definitely should have won that game. So it is kind of a tricky spot, Ron.
Yeah, and well, broken record, special teams matter, but this is a point in time that I want to give a shout out to one Jeff Dawson, because we talked kind of off air a little bit a couple weeks ago about team totals, and I'm dipping my feet in the water on these team totals because I don't think the market, and this is probably something where you're ahead of the curve, and that's why it's working. I don't think the market has adjusted to how to do team totals. And I'm looking, and I'm also saying that you can get a point discrepancy among different shops for team totals, and they're not being adjusted the way they need to be. And it's kind of like a project that I want to get into. And it was based on just asking you a question about, I noticed that you're very big on team totals. What attracts you to that? And when I have some spare time, I've looked into it a little bit. I've delved, I've done 3 team totals since we talked. They're 3-0. I'm saying there's something here. So I want to give a shout out to you. It is an area because I don't feel like I'm in general, an over-under player. There are certain situations I like in bowl games and some other situations, but it's not an area. I want to stick to things that I'm good at. But this team totals is an area that I definitely am going to be looking into more.
Oh, you made my day. You really did. And for me, let's say from COVID, the 18 months we got out of our comfort zone, we kept plugging along, whether it was NASCAR, golf, comeback player of the year, Alex Smith, when he was with Washington. And then I noticed as the states started to legalize and more states were coming on, the numbers were just getting tight and tighter. And so what I was looking for was less traveled markets and able to actually turn some big favorites into dogs on the team totals and getting plus money and able to look at the Q from Vegas, 24 and a half. Well, most people will say, well, I got 1 to 24 and they're going to give me plus money to get to 25 or better. And again, it's not an exact science, but what you're also doing, Ron, is you're taking one variable out when it comes to the under overs. You know, if there was an under over of 51 and your side scores 41 and the other team only scored 7, what are you going to say? Well, the team I really like did their job. The other team didn't show up. I don't even have to deal with them anymore.
It's a new perspective, at least on my end. And so it's a great find on your part. And one thing you mentioned about props, and more people are getting into the prop market, those numbers have stiffened. By the time we get to Friday afternoon and Saturday, it's hard to find major value. And then some of the juice is a little out of whack with some of these books and stuff like that, where you're not getting a really good, what I think is when I calculate whether or not there's return on investment on my end. If you're paying 135 and the other side is even money, or the other side is also minus 105, there's so much juice in it. You're not getting the true numbers that you want to get. So it's a little harder to enter the prop market and have the volume that I used to have for, not only limit reasons, but also because it's really froze up. And so these other markets are interesting, and hopefully they provide some advantages if you're doing your homework.
Well, I can't wait to hear this journey as we progress down the rest of 2024 into 25. Next thing you know, Ron, you're going to be asking me about NCAA college basketball team totals or baseball. I'm only kidding. So I'm kind of curious. There's a team playing that is highly respected, that had a great year last year, that is undefeated this year, was tested 2 weeks ago by the BC Eagles, and I'm talking about Missouri, and they have their first road game of the year. They traveled to Texas A&M, and they're 2.5 point underdogs at A&M. Obviously, kind of sort of, A&M can't afford another loss here. How do you equate this game, first road game, versus the start of the season, getting fat at home?
Yeah, you hit on probably the most fascinating game of the week, and it is interesting from my standpoint. First road game for Missouri is, I'm thinking it's less impactful than first road game for new coaches, for teams that don't have a 4-year starting quarterback, for teams that don't have Luther Burden at wide receiver, stuff like that. I think Missouri can handle it, especially since they even had a week off before this game. A&M, obviously, the way it looks, Mike Elko, slight upgrade at coach. He's doing a fine job there. It's almost like a play-in, play-out game because Missouri's SEC schedule is softer than just about everybody else. So even though they have no losses, they can't afford too many losses. And A&M has the loss to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has the loss to Illinois. So it is an important game from that standpoint for A&M. Not that they had necessarily visions of a 12-team playoff, but they can't get there probably if they lose this game, because 10-2 for A&M is different than 10-2 with a Georgia pedigree and schedule and a Texas pedigree and schedule. It's just both of these teams need to win this game. So I find it very interesting. I do have some variables that favor Missouri in this game. We're looking at about 2.5. It would be an auto play for me if we got to +3, and still a consideration for Missouri at 2.5. But it is a fascinating game. I do think there's a path for A&M to win this game, but my numbers and my situations would, if you ask me, I'd say Missouri is the side that I'll be looking at.
Two more college questions before we dive into the NFL. We had Matt Grissom, Quentin Mills on from the NCAA Insiders. Matt, season ticket holder for Arkansas, and the biggest game in a long, long time in Fayetteville against the undefeated Tennessee Vols. 13.5-point underdogs Arkansas is. Matt pulled up a crazy stat that the head coach is like 6-0 at night games, and 4 of the 5 have been outrights. And their only loss, actually, they do have one loss, and that was to BYU. I think it was last year, he said. For me, outside looking in, this is not your Tennessee team of old that you roll the ball out and say first 1 to 40 wins. Great coach, great quarterback with Nico, but they have a defense this year. And they made a statement 2 weeks ago in Norman, Oklahoma. But I think this is the perfect spot for Arkansas. I think they are primed. Am I crazy to think this is going to be a close game? Because Matt says their defense can't stop a nosebleed, and he thinks the Vols can put up 50 if they want.
Yeah, I'm proud to say that I have conflict in this game, so I don't have to worry about it too much unless the line goes really crazy, because there's value on Arkansas. But one of the reasons there's value on Arkansas is because the staff has let them down. They should have beaten A&M. I mean, they had that game won, and they let it slip away. And there was a game earlier in the year that I believe Arkansas should have won as well. So while I believe this Arkansas team is improved over last year in a number of different spots, they're not finishing the deal. They're not closing the deal. And in a matchup analysis, Tennessee's ability to shut down Arkansas's running game might be in play here. My running stats actually pick neither team. So it's not an edge for Arkansas on my adjusted running stats, which I take out sacks, kneel downs, and stuff like that. So I don't have an edge for either team there. What I do think is that Tennessee gets a coaching edge, a week off edge, and so on. But Arkansas has some line value in this game because I don't make the line as high as it is. And technically, if it gets to 14 or 14 more, I'm supposed to play Arkansas. So the question I have whenever you have lines like this is, can Arkansas, even if they get behind by more than 14, can they backdoor cover? What's the offense look like? And if the line does get a little higher, that's the question I still have to ask myself. Do I think Arkansas can score a garbage touchdown and cover the spread? Because there's a lot of games, there's a lot of teams where you say, okay, we had a game, Boise and Georgia Southern. Boise scored 56, but Georgia Southern had the offense to backdoor cover. So I was comfortable with that particular lineup. Sometimes you don't have an offense that can backdoor cover. The question I'm going to look at is, does Arkansas, if it gets out of hand, can Arkansas backdoor in the middle of the or end of the fourth quarter?
And we had the team total in that game, so we got that real early. Well, third quarter, I think it was.
No sweat for you, sweat for some of us.
No sweat, exactly. And that's the beauty, again, going back to the team totals, is once we get it, we're in, and we move on to another game. Don't have to worry about the front door or the back door being open, Ron.
Yeah. I should have, if I would have had the conversation with you about a month previous, I could have been with you on the team total. It would have been a lot less sweat.
We talked, I was 0-2. We talked on Thursday last week, and I did a show on Friday, and I don't use the L word. I don't use locks. The only locks are on the front and back door. And I told the world this. Friday night, Virginia Tech was traveling to Miami, And I says, I am leaving this right on the desk right now. The Virginia Tech team total is 17.5. And you can get the over plus 115. I guarantee you, since I'm not playing them, they win. And not only do they cash that, they technically should have won the game. And I was thinking of you the whole time because I know pre-flop, preseason, and early in the year you had talked about this Tech team, and you knew I was a little salty. They got us twice. Thoughts on Tech? Thoughts on Miami moving forward now? Because we said they're a team that can play both sides, but a close game, Cristobal gets in the way of this team, and he almost did again.
Virginia Tech had a great game plan against Miami, and they really took control of the line of scrimmage, and they dictated play offense against Miami's defense. Hope that Cam Ward would make a couple of mistakes. Virginia Tech's defense is not shut down either. So it was a good test for Miami. I was more of the kind of person with Miami is let them lose once and then it starts steamrolling a little bit. So the fact that they win this game keeps them relevant. They have revenge over Florida State this week. So I can't quite pull the trigger. I think the points are a little high in the Miami game this particular week. But Miami got a scare, and it was a scare because I think they didn't game plan effectively for Virginia Tech. And that's back to your statement about Cristobal and getting in the way, that he kind of got in the way of that. As far as the ending, when all the stuff that I saw, I would not have ruled it a catch personally. It was too tough. But once you rule it a catch, how do you keep it from the other way? And the bottom line is you hope that the humans were objective in this case. But if Miami loses this game, it hurts the chance for the ACC to have two bids. If Miami wins it, it puts both Miami and Clemson still in line to get two ACC bids. I don't know where any other team falls that could actually unseat them unless they upset in the ACC title game. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. I don't know how I feel about the whole conclusion of the game. I just think it points out that Virginia Tech and Miami are not complete teams, and they could be beaten again with a good game plan, either one of them.
Paul Stone reached out to me during the week, and he was not on this week. He was under the weather, and he was asking me questions about Castellanos. And, we were at the BC game on Saturday, did not play. Rumor had it he had a stomach bug, flu. Talked to a couple other people, and there was hush potential concussion. Long story short, he is playing at Virginia. Surprised with Virginia, a 2.5 point favorite there against BC with Castellanos this week.
Yeah, I have Boston College power rating circled, so I don't know quite what to do with it. I'm not terribly surprised with the line. It's hard for me to set a power rating when that impactful a player is either in or out, or is he 100% or is he not 100%. So with him out, certainly I would have made Virginia over a field goal. So I'm not sure what to do with the number. I think Virginia has the opportunity to hold their own in the run game in this matchup. But it's not necessarily a game on my radar screen. I will look at the results and learn from the results as opposed to looking at it from a betting standpoint.
Before we transition to NFL, is there any little nuggets to the standing room only that you could release on the college side for everyone watching and listening?
Well, you're going to give me the button hook at the end, so we won't go quite into that right now. But I will say this. I mean, I'm such a big fan of Indiana's coach, and they're 5-0. I know it hasn't been the toughest schedule, but they won a game where they were -3 or -4 in turnovers, and they turned back Maryland, but that was a coaching mismatch. This is a road game against a rested Northwestern team, so I'm really, really going to be intrigued to see what that offense does against a pretty good Northwestern team. And Northwestern doesn't have the greatest offense, but we're going to find out a little bit about Indiana's resolve at the line of scrimmage. To be honest, I'm really looking forward to that game and learning a lot from that particular game. I don't think it's a slam dunk for Indiana, by the way. but I think it's a slam dunk that this is a fascinating game on my watch.
NFL, not for long. Any given Sunday, just when we're about to finally anoint the number one team in the league, the Buffalo Bills, Lamar Jackson, O. Henry says, hold my beer. And the Ravens steamroll the Bills there. Patrick Mahomes, magically 4-0, where we know they should have been 0-2 to start the year between Baltimore and Cincinnati. No Pacheco, no Hollywood Brown, now no Rashee Rice. Injuries, and more injuries. I will give you the floor. I mean, trying to manage 19 fantasy football teams and on bye weeks this week, next week, and London games, I'll be bald by next week's show. So the stage is yours about the NFL and injuries.
Okay. I manage 0 fantasy leagues. So, and I could be pulling my hair out because you have to handicap these things. I leave the fantasy football to my daughter, who does very well in the fantasy stuff. So, but I thought this would be a good chance to talk about injuries, since we know a lot of them on Friday, and what my initial thoughts are of some of these injuries and how it might impact the game. So if you're looking at Houston, for example, they're going to lose Joe Mixon, which makes them one-dimensional, which gives Buffalo a chance to look at that. But by the same token, Buffalo is going to lose about the only wide receiver they had that was there last year that is still here this year. So Josh Allen is going to be very important in that game. He can't afford to turn the ball over. But that's a game where you have impact injuries, to me, on both sides. Neighbors out for the New York Giants is a big injury, thing too. Concussion. He didn't pass the muster. Singletary may or may not play. It sounds like he's not going to play. Either Hyatt, the second-year wide receiver, shows up this week, or he doesn't show up, because that's an intriguing spot against Seattle. Because Seattle didn't face a lot of tough quarterbacks weeks 1 to 3. Then they go in last week, and they had the defense had it handed to them last week. They finally faced a quarterback that had a pulse. So I think Seattle is vulnerable. Even to Daniel Jones, they're a little bit vulnerable to the New York Giants. But now without Neighbors in the lineup, it kind of changes things just a little bit in that matchup. I have to revisit that matchup just a little bit. Mosley is out for the Jets. That means it opens it up for a very powerful Minnesota team, and Aaron Jones has just complemented the play of Sam Darnold so much that's really helped Darnold thrive. And this is a very tough Jet defense with Sauce Gardner and so on. I'm not sure Darnold will be on his best performance this week, but I think the loss of Mosley might help him a little bit. Njoku is supposedly back for Cleveland, and I think that's a big thing against Washington's defense. So I see that as a plus for Cleveland. I wouldn't sleep on the fact that Cleveland's offense and even Deshaun Watson gets a couple of gimmies against Washington's defense by going to his tight end, where he doesn't have to worry about his wide receiver drops or worry about routes that Watson isn't what can I say? He's not throwing wide receivers open, but he could hit a tight end. That might be really good. Hendrickson for Cincinnati is a must add. He's going to be in for Cincinnati against a Baltimore team. It's all hands on deck for Cincinnati because they don't have a great defense. They need everybody they can. Who else can I talk about? McBride for Arizona. Very important part of that. He cleared concussion protocol today. If San Francisco is firing on all cylinders, they may be the best team in football, but there is a weakness in their pass defense, in my opinion. So having McBride back at least helps Arizona. Arizona only scored 14 against Washington last week. That was my biggest takeaway as to how did Arizona only score 14 last week? So McBride is important in that particular game. Dobbs joins Watson as being out for Green Bay, but there are other targets that they have. They're going to need them against the Rams in that particular game. Micah Parsons, finally, Micah Parsons is going to be out against Pittsburgh. He's the guy in the middle that clogs lanes and so on. We know what Pittsburgh likes to do as far as their running backs and what they want to do with play action with Fields. Not having Micah Parsons chase down Fields, it's got to be worth at least a point in terms of that point spread. Somebody else pointed out, Adam Chernoff, who's an expert in terms of really diagnosing games, pointed out injuries to the defensive line, defensive tackles, nose tackles, a lot of defensive injuries. I've said this the last 2 weeks, more defensive injuries than we're used to. But when you can't clog the middle, when some of these defensive tackles are out of the game, it really affects game plans. And we're seeing teams not be able to get teams off the field. It may not have lead to more points, but it leads to better time of possession. And I think these defensive line injuries are impacting the spreads of a lot of games.
Shout out to Elijah Cox. What a week, my brother. Have a great, great weekend. Tell the boys that we said hello. Shout out, of course, to Mr. Russell Saylor. Russell brought up two things. Jonathan Taylor out, and he goes, he's reading through the tea leaves, and I am too. I'm going to say Joe Flacco starts there as well.
Boy, a lot of uncertainty for Indy. Sorry for not mentioning that. Kwity Paye, I think he's out. There's another, I think Kenny Moore is out as well. And then you're playing against a team, Jacksonville, that there's a disconnect between coach and the media, coach and the players. Lawrence, where's his mindset? What's he trying to do? I know everybody's different. Every quarterback is different. You don't have to be so demonstrative. A lot of people feel that Trevor Lawrence, he's not really into the whole thing. I think that's just his personality type. But right now, Jacksonville really needs a win before they go to London. And if they go to 0-5, you could be looking at a lot of things falling apart. The wheels are falling apart already. You'd think they could beat Indianapolis. They have like 9 in a row at home against Indianapolis, but we're not sure because Jacksonville hasn't proven to be anything this year.
Yeah, and again, Evan Ingram stubbed his toe or whatever his problem is. Insert strange. He is now questionable again. Some of these guys, they get nicked up and they can work the system. Another week. I got a question for you. The 3 quarterbacks that came out 1, 2, 3, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. And, of course, J.J. McCarthy at 4 is hurt and out for the year. Okay. Colts still have big play guys front. Looks like rain game. Give me the Colts outright. Edgar and James game, Russell. Edgar and James. My question to you, and I'm not taking anything away from Jaden Daniels. We all knew he was a great quarterback at LSU. We knew he was going to be good. But I've been talking to some colleagues, and, sometimes the perfect storm, the right setting. Please tell me Cliff Kingsbury has a lot to do with his early success in the first 4 weeks as well.
Yeah, the way that he operates as an offensive coordinator, he deserves a lot of credit. What surprises me is that the Washington offensive line is able to protect as well as they have. I'm looking at the sack totals. They've allowed 9 sacks in 4 games. But according to my numbers, that's overachieving. Part of it is Daniels and his elusiveness. Part of it is Kingsbury and his game planning. But I still didn't think Washington's offensive line was good enough to be above league average in terms of protecting their quarterback, in terms of allowing so few sacks. So we'll see how it plays out. The more game tape that gets into the system, but very pleasantly surprised with how Washington's offense is operating right now. And it'll be interesting to see how they do against a Cleveland team. Cleveland's not perfect right now. They have 11 defensive sacks. This will be interesting because Daniels is through the roof in terms of his completion percentage, but Cleveland led the league last year in best completion percentage, under 60, which is hard in this day and age, 57, I think, last year. And they're under 60 right now through 4 games. So it's hard to complete a pass against Cleveland. It's going to be an interesting test for Daniels this week. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more.
On the show this morning, I was on with Wager Talk Andrew McGinnis at McGinnis Picks at 10 a.m. this morning. I'm not a side guy. I'm a team total guy for the most part. I pick sides, don't get me wrong. 3 teams this week. Don't forget, we remember what we saw last. So the team that looked great last week usually doesn't look as great and vice versa. Jets in London to face the Vikings, undefeated Vikings versus a Jets team 2 weeks ago, the rebirth of Aaron Rodgers against the Patriots, and then they lose 10-9 in the rain against the Broncos. The Bengals hosting the Ravens. Now, we know the Bengals defense can't stop a nosebleed, and here come the Ravens that look like the Super Bowl champs on Sunday night against the Buffalo Bills. And the other one that you're alluding to, the Cleveland Browns. On Monday, 10:30 a.m., we have Bill Krakenberg on every Monday morning. He goes, I'm going to do something for the first time I've never done before. He goes, I'm going to give out a game in 30 seconds. When I do, the line will move a half point within 30 seconds. He gave out Cleveland plus 3.5. 30 seconds later, it dropped to 3 at all the shops. So of those 3 games, is there any that you got that feeling? It's October. This is Bengal time. This is Cool Joe time. I really think they're in a must-win spot here.
Yeah, well, without giving away the farm, I'm rooting for Bill Krakenberger this week.
Okay.
Because Cleveland is in probably the best situation of the week. It's a situation. When I look at situations, first of all, I look at sample sizes. I look at how it affects this year versus rolling averages, last 3 years, last 5 years, last 10 years, and so on. Has the game changed and so on? So sample size, they're in little subsets, but the whole sample size that Cleveland is in is 460 sample size. Last 3-year percentages in general, about 60.1%. Last 5 years, about 61%. Last 10 years, about 60%. Some of these situations, they lose their steam over time. This has been incredibly consistent over time. And Cleveland is in this situation where this is winner go home. And Cleveland is, I know there's not yet a ceiling for Daniels, and there's not yet a floor maybe for Watson, which is my biggest worry. But the bottom line is Cleveland's in a very good situation this week.
Before we give you that 7-yard little button hook here for your closing thoughts, is there another NFL game on the slate that really intrigues you Sunday or Monday?
You know, they're all kind of look-alike games. I'll give you a game because it's near and dear to your heart. I asked this question of Chris. I asked this question of one other person this week. Who is your lowest rated team as the roster stands right now? You know, take into account injuries or whatever. I'll ask you, who is your lowest rated NFL team?
As it stands right now, I would have to say the Patriots.
Yeah, and probably most people would agree with you. So they're right there, but I have Miami lower power rated as their roster is right now. It's just night and day difference between Tyreek Hill getting open and catching a ball in stride with anybody but Tua. It's a run game that I thought would thrive, you know, with their second-year Texas A&M running back, and he's averaging 3.5 yards per carry. He's much more dangerous catching passes out of the backfield. It's a team that just lost Phillips on the defensive end, pass rusher again. New England's famous for shortening games right now, playing somewhat fundamental defense. I'm looking at their numbers. Nothing stands out as particularly fantastic in New England's defense or terrible. And their offense, we know, not so good. New England, 11 points per game. They're, Brissett isn't stretching the field, the wide receivers, but still, I think I like New England this week because I don't think we're giving enough. Credit's the wrong word, or blame, or whatever. I don't think we've realized that Miami is not the same team as they were. And now we have 4 weeks of data. We're crossing over the data. I don't have situations that favor New England or Miami. I just have the eye test that tells me that Miami is not that good a team right now. And maybe they get it right against New England because New England's not that good. But my power rating on Miami is 32nd right now.
And that was my second choice there. And there's talks that that Tua could be back week 8, but again, if Miami goes and is 1-6, 1-7, I'd be almost like, hey, it's a wrap, kid. Why don't you take the rest of the year off, and then we'll figure it out. Obviously, and going into next year, whether they draft a quarterback and see how Tua is. So definitely something to keep an eye on. I'll go on record and guess that Gillette Stadium won't be sold out, or there won't be a full stadium. How's that sound on Sunday?
Yeah, so you don't get a lot of home field advantage for New England right now. And my home field advantage is, people have asked me this, for most games that are not Sunday night or Monday night, it's between 1.25 points and 1.75 points. So almost everyone gets fewer than 2 points home field advantage. So if Miami's on the low end of that, you're only going to get 1.25 points for home field. So, I mean, if New England, as far as their home stadium, I mean, they used to be really good on that. There's, again, it's just a feeling for me. It's not based on statistics, other than the matchups in there. I don't have situations that go back here, there, and say New England is the play, Miami's not the play, or whatever. It's just that right now, if I'm New England, I feel I can win this game. And that's how they should feel. And Miami, off their last performance on Monday in a short week, may not have that same mindset. They may say, oh yeah, we can beat them. But right now we're struggling to find our own footing. There's just a different mindset that I think I like New England's mindset better going into this Sunday game.
Who would have thought week 5, Miami, New England could be the loser has the inside track to the number 1 pick? How's that sound?
Isn't that amazing? But good. I mean, I hope they tie, actually, considering I have season win totals against both of them. So we'll see.
Scroll has been going the whole time. Everyone knows on Twitter to go find you, obviously, at Ron A Sports. And of course, they can find your work at Wager Talk. But we're not going to let you go this second. As you stated a few minutes ago, I give you that nice little 7-yard little button hook. And we're all anxiously awaiting Ron's closing thoughts.
So in addition to this being a fascinating week for certain games and what we're going to learn about it, it's a fascinating week for the culture of college football, in my opinion. This is the first week that we're going to really look at all the new and all the roster changes and all the conference realignment. I still have to get used to when I'm looking at my team sheets and I'm organizing them. Oh, wait, Stanford, I got to put them with the ACC pile. And, that mindset isn't there. UCLA, oh, I've got to put them with the Big Ten pile. How do I, it just doesn't ring a bell right now. But we have 4 games right now where we have a lot of travel going on. And I'm really curious to see how this plays out. You have Virginia Tech off a gut-wrenching, controversial loss going all the way to Palo Alto to play a Stanford team. Little underrated offensively, not that good defensively, but that's a long trip. You have UCLA going to Penn State. Is that tonight? No, that's not tonight.
Tomorrow.
That's a tomorrow game. But they're going to a place that they haven't. I don't know if they've ever been to. They last played, I think, head to head in 1965. So even though I was alive then, I probably don't recall much about it. So they're going to a place, an environment they haven't gone to without the right mindset to begin with. So long trip for them, very long trip for them. That's what they signed up. That's what not the players signed up for, but that's what their athletic administrator and department signed up for when they made these crazy moves. Michigan State on a Friday night is going to go to Oregon. They're going to find Eugene, Oregon, and they're going to say, okay, that's, not cross country, but it's cross country enough that they're going to go. Now, their coach is familiar with playing Oregon, but their team isn't familiar with all this travel and so on. That's a long trip. And then you take Miami of Florida, and they're going all the way to Cal off a near loss, almost a disaster. It would have been a great situation for Cal to catch Miami off a loss. At least Miami's off the win and still has everything on the table. But still, they're going to you don't find ACC schools going this far across the country on a normal basis. And now it's a league game, and they have to play their best at a Cal team that would like nothing better. Isn't game day there and stuff like that, which is just crazy. So interesting environment. So you have those 4 games, road trips, all 4 of them that if we turn back the clock to last year would not have happened. And now this year they're happening. So this is kind of the test case for all these trips for 18, 19, 20-year-olds and so on. I find that the most fascinating thing in college football this weekend.
I agree. I'll be curious to see if Marshawn Lynch will pull up in his golf cart and a bag of Skittles. He'll probably be giving out the plays with McAfee and Saban. Who the hell knows there? But everyone can go follow you at Ron A Sports. But tell them where they can find all your work. Give them your podcast schedule throughout the week, and at Ron A Sports, obviously on Twitter.
We'll be back with a normal Tuesday, Thursday group next week. So I'll be back with you on Thursday with Chris. I did not do the show with Chris and Ted, the Inside Blitz, last Thursday. They carried on just fine without me, but I'll be back with them this coming Thursday. Might have another show. Have articles up at Wager Talk, a couple of them this week, looking at the NFC teams through week 4. And then one of the matchups, I think, if I remember correctly, it was the Dallas-Pittsburgh write-up that I put up just for things to look at. So you could check out the Wager Talk. But otherwise, as always, love talking to you and love being on your show.
Oh, well, what a way to end the week, or even what a way to end a Thursday where we're back to next week. Last stat, J-Mac on Colin Cowherd today. Back in the day, those physical defenses, when it was the Ravens, after a team played the Ravens, their record was 0 and whatever because of the physicality. And then it used to be the San Francisco 49ers. J-Mac, here's your homework assignment. The Detroit Lions is that team this year. Teams playing the Detroit Lions are over the next week because of the physicality, and the point differential is like 100 and something to 30 something. Now, I don't have their schedule in front of me. I don't know who these teams are, but they are going Seattle short week, goes from Detroit back home to face a neighborless Giants. So keep an eye on that Seattle Giants game and say, maybe J-Mac and Jeff are onto something.
You'll appreciate this. I actually kept stats on 2 teams for a long, long time. Teams after playing Pittsburgh and that physical team were literally about 36% against the spread. And then teams after traveling to Seattle, which is the longest trip for a lot of these East Coast teams. And then in their heyday with what they had in the secondary, Legion of Doom and stuff like that, where they were both physical and a long trip. Teams after playing Seattle was another one that was sub 40% for those teams. So I did keep stats on that. So J-Mac's onto something.
What a way to end the week. Shout out to Russell Saylor. Shout out to Elijah Cox. Shout out to Mr. Lucky, PB, Dr. Lance, Billy Hewlin, the whole crew. We can't thank you enough. Our week is complete. Guys, behave yourself. It's payday. It's Fade the Public Friday. All right, guys. Don't go run into the casinos. Go back home. Enjoy the family. Pay the bills. Let everyone else be the public and the degens. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Mr. Ron Marmolevsky at Ron A Sports, we wish everyone a blessed day, a better weekend, and we will see you